How, Dao we won again. This is good. But what is best in life?
The open steppe, fleet horse, falcons at your wrist, and the wind in your hair.
Wrong! Conan, what is best in life?
To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their women.
That is good. That is good.
Shalom, 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 shalom. As always, first I want to give all the praises and the glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Barakah Kadash. Yahweh is the name of the Most High God. Yahweh Shai is the name of the Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. Double honors to the apostles and to the elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the 144,000 and the hopefully elect brothers and sisters of the house of Israel. Shalom. So, I want to do a quick response to this video that Elder Apostle Tahar put up. It was called Analyzing Deuteronomy 21, 10 to 14. You will not understand it if you are emotional. All right. So this is the video here. Let's just put it up on the screen here. This is the video here that Apostle Tahar put up yesterday. I actually saw it this morning. So I really wanted to do a quick response to this video regarding what was discussed here by these guys in the house of the house of the so-called consciousness, right? Sarnetta and his sidekick Jabari, right? They did this live video on the 18th of February, which is a couple of days ago, regarding Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 10 to 14. All right. So you need to get a glass, a jar, put all your emotions into this jar, close the jar, put the jar in the freezer, let your emotions freeze in the freezer before you listen to what I got to say. All right. This is what you need to do. Take your emotions, cop it up all into a jar, get it all out of you, put it in a nice airtight jar, then take that jar, go to your freezer, put it in the freezer, and let your emotions freeze in the freezer, right? Because we're going to go into a little bit of this. It's not going to take too long, just for you to give you a bit more understanding regarding what Apostle Tahar was speaking on. And I believe Apostle Gabal also made a response video to this particular verse and scripture, Deuteronomy 21:10. So without further ado, we'll listen to a bit of what Apostle Tahar had to say. I'm going to play out about 3-4 minutes of it. Then we're going to pull out a couple scriptures, bit of evidence, and then we're going to call it a day. All right? So let's go. Let's hit it.
So anyway, I'm just going to let this video play and I'll chime in when the Spirit hits me. So just listen up and enjoy.
Read that for me. Deuteronomy 21, verses 10 to 14. Mm-hmm. When you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God gives them in your hand, and you take them captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire to take her to be your wife, and you bring her home to your house, she shall shave her head and pare, and she shall take off her clothes in which she was captured.
Yeah, this is of another nation. I remember at one point, the ISUPK said, I forget who, this was years ago, they said that this precept right here, Deuteronomy 21 and 10, is referring to when Israel fights another group of Israelites, because the wives that you're going to take are Israelites. This is talking about other nations.
Remain in your house and lament her father and her mother for a full month. After that, you may go into her and be her husband.
Full month is a moon cycle from the new moon to the new moon. If she was captured on the full moon, then it would be from the full moon to the full moon. And by the way, the new moon is when the moon is dark.
And she shall be your wife. But if you no longer delight in her, you shall let her go where she wants. But you shall not sell her for money, nor shall you treat her as a slave. since you have humiliated her.
All right, see right there. Read it again. Start from 10. We're going to break this down.
That is 10 I was reading.
No, you went all the way down to 14.
Yeah. Oh, you
all
want
right.
to stop?
Yes, go ahead. Read 10.
When you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God gives them into your hand.
Stop. Is that 10?
Yes.
Stop.
That's not all of 10.
Okay, just read 10.
And you take them captive. That's the end of 10.
Okay, now, what do you get out of that? Break this in, because I always bring this to Zariak and all of them.
I mean, I think that what we're seeing here is something that I think is reprehensible. Now, listen, we know that war is problematic in any time that it has occurred in human history. Mm-hmm. But this is different here. We're actually in the law of God being in favor of the sexual capture.
Thank you, bro.
As one of.
My question is this: when you go back to the ancient Egyptians, the Kemetic people, the people of Mizraim, when they took down enemies, did not they take women as captives and had sex with them and made them their women, whether they liked it or not? I don't think, and I'll do some research on it. I'll leave it up to y'all too. That's with any nation, but we're dealing with the Kemetic people, the Egyptians, so-called Egyptians, which is a Greek word, people of Mizraim. When they took down their enemies and they saw a woman that they like, did they say, well, I'm not going to mess with you, maybe I can rap to you, walk, show you the pyramids, and maybe you'll start to like me and we can build a rapport and get to. Did they take these women and grape them if they didn't want to be taken?
Man.
So let's answer the question that Apostle Tahar put to the brothers and anyone else out there wants to make a video regarding this. Did the Kemetic nations do the same thing? Was it any different amongst any nation back there? This is why I started with the video of Conan the Barbarian, all right? When he was asked by the leader, what are the best things in life? What did Conan say? The crushing of your enemy and the lamentation and hearing the lamentation of their women. So was it any different for any other nation? So I was looking into it a little bit, right? Apostle Tahar put the question out there, so let's have a look. So this is an article that was published on June 15th, 2023. So we're in the spring link here, right? This is the article here, right? Ancient Egyptian slavery, all right? This is the Palgrave Handbook of Global Slavery Throughout History, all right? Ancient Egyptian slavery, all right? So this chapter provides a broad strokes overview of the forms of enslavement and coerced labor in Egypt from the Old Kingdom, 2600 BC, to the end of the Ptolemaic period, 30 BC, tracking the methods of entry into and exit from enslaved status, as well as the extraction of slave labor, although there are some constants, such as enslavement through capture in war, which is what we're going to look at, right? That's what Deuteronomy 28:21 is speaking about, enslavement through capture in war, over the course of nearly 3 millennia of Egyptian history, right? Although there are some constants, such as enslavement through capture in war over the course of 3 millenniums of Egyptian history. The forms of enslavement and coerced labor manifested differently as the state underwent societal and economic change. So, the enslavement of capture in war was going on over 3 millennium, 3,000 years of Egyptian history. So let's quickly go into it. First week it was quoted about us going into slavery under the Egyptians. I'm the Lord your power, who has delivered you, you Israelites, from the land of Egypt, the house of slaves. Because Egypt was known as the house of slaves, the house of bondage. This is why we tell you all the time that the word Egypt is symbolic with the word house of slaves. That's what it actually means. It's house. Egypt is a Greek word. It means house of bondage, house of slaves. This is why we always tell you that America is spiritually known as Sodom for homosexuality, and Egypt because it was the place of slavery, a house of slaves over 400 years. Slavery to the children of Israel happened in some spiritual Egypt, America, because that's where it comes from. The land of Egypt is the house of slaves. Spiritual Egypt is America. Anyway, it's a slavery in ancient Egypt still exerts a powerful hold over imaginations today. Based on the Exodus narrative, the view of Egypt is often that of a house of slaves, a society founded on slave labor. You understand why we tell you that we know? Revelations 11 and I think it's 11 and 9 or 8, where it talks about spiritual, that great city, spiritually known as Sodom and Egypt. This is exactly why. Exodus 20 and 2. An Egyptian documentation reveals little about slaves and slavery. Instead, it provided us with evidence of marginalized groups, prisoners of war, ambiguous terminology, and blurs in the line between servants and slave, right? So, as you can see, as I said here, house of slaves. Based on the Exodus narrative, scripture, the view of Egypt often that of a house of slaves, a society, what did it say? A society founded on, let's just get this a bit more, a society founded on slave labor, Egypt, all right? America, spiritual Egypt. So let's jump down here. So I didn't want to spend too long on this, right? Historical overview of the different kingdoms, right? I want to go straight to it. See if I can quickly find what I was looking for. Okay. Entry into enslavement, all right? This is for all you Kemetic fanatics, all right? That, like what the apostle says, man, there's a missile waiting for you Kemetic fanatics. Kemetic fanatics. That's your new name, you Kemetic fanatics. Entry into enslavement in the world of the Kemetics, right? In his classification of coerced labor, Michael van den Linden listed 10 reasons for entering a coerced labor relationship, of which the following 7 are relevant for Egyptian coerced labor. Sale between individuals or institutions, hiring out or leasing of owned persons, self-sale, birth to an enslaved woman, abduction, debt bondage, and taxation levied. Though all are attested, the incidents of these reasons differ over time, as summarized in the following tables, with an X indicating attestation, right? This table should also be considered in context of the varying availabilities of sources. The Old Kingdom and the Sate and the Persian periods and fewer sources are likely evidence of methods of entry, but does not necessarily mean these methods did not exist, only that they are undocumented, all right? So it's showing you the kingdoms that what they did, right? Like the Old Kingdom, abduction and taxation. The Middle Kingdom, abduction and taxation. The New Kingdom, third intermediate period, abduction, taxation, sale, hiring. The Site and Persian periods, abduction, sale, self-sale, and the Ptolemaic period, abduction, taxation, sale, birth, debt. So abduction would be capturing during war. So all of the kingdoms, the Egyptian kingdoms, from the Old Kingdom all the way up to the Ptolemy, which were the Greeks when they took over and became the new pharaohs of Egypt, which was about 300 BC under Alexander the Great. From all the way 3,000 millenniums, capture during war was a part of slavery captives, right? So let's have a quick read, right? So we're going to deal with abduction, right? It says these methods of entry differ not just on their incidence, but also in their manifestation. For example, abduction in the Middle Kingdom took the form of prisoners of war from Nubia and Libya drafted into the military. In contrast, abduction in the Ptolemaic period included native Egyptians enslaved as punishment for their participation in the rebellion. Of course, because the Ptolemies are not Egyptians, they're not Hamites. The Ptolemies are Edomites, all right? So they taken Egyptians, after they conquered them into slavery, it's the same thing. They've captured them during war. That's what abduction means, all right? So let's see if Deuteronomy 21 and 10 to 14 also applied to, were the Kemetic societies doing this as well, right? I say we had a law, we had the law of the Most High to show us how to deal with that, whereas they were just doing it off of their own backs, right? But let's see. Abduction. It says, throughout Egyptian history, the best attested method of entry into enslaved status was through abduction as a prisoner of war. Let me read this again. Throughout Egyptian history, the best attested method of entry into enslaved status was through abduction as a prisoner of war. So we are debating this here, right? Deuteronomy 21 and 10, right? The laws of the Most High, right? Where it says, when thou goest forth to war, to the Israelites, against thine enemies, and the Lord Yahweh thy power has delivered them into thine hands, your enemies, and thou hast taken them captives. We've captured the ones that survived the war, right? The men, the women, the children. And seest amongst the captives a beautiful woman, and has a desire unto her, that thou wouldest have her to thy wife. So you were free to choose, right? You warriors of war were free to choose these captive women as your wife. Then thou should bring her home to thine house. So you're going to bring her home to your house, and she shall shave her head and pare her nails, right? So she's gonna, it's like it's kind of like she's preparing herself to be clean again, all right? And she shall put on the raiment of her captivity from off her. She's going to take off her clothes of captivity, and shall remain in thine house, and bewail her father and mother a full month. So she's got a month to mourn her parents, right? And after that, thou shalt go in unto her. After that, you are allowed to go in unto her and be her husband, and she shall be thy wife. So you're allowed to take her as your wife, which means you're allowed to go in unto her and have sex with her. All right? It's as simple as that. And it shall be, if thou have no delight in her, so if for some reason after you've had sex with your captive that you've taken from the war, prisoner of war woman, beautiful woman you've come across, you want her to be your wife, because sex is marriage, right? In amongst the Israelites, sex is marriage. And it shall be, if thou have no delight in her, then thou shalt let her go whither she will. So if for some reason that chemistry didn't bold after you've had sex with her, you've spent a little time with her, you can let her go, but thou shalt not sell her at all for money. So you can't sell her as a slave. Thou shalt not make merchandise of her, because thou hast humbled her. You cannot make any merchandise of her. You got to let her go free. So she now becomes a free woman if for some reason you don't want to continue to keep her as your wife, as your concubine, your wife, right? Because you humbled her, you had sex with her, you had taken her into your chamber, she became your wife. Whether she wanted to have sex with you or not, she was humbled by you. You was allowed to take her. That's the law of war. These are the enemies that the Lord put before you. And domestic relations, when thou goest forth to war against thine enemies, and the Lord Yahweh thy power has delivered them into thine hands, and thou hast taken them captives. So you were allowed to do this because it was a law unto you. The Most High delivered your enemies into your hand. You see a beautiful woman, you can bring her back. She's allowed to mourn her parents 30 days, like a full moon cycle. She shaves her head and her nails. You can go in unto her, have sex with her, take her to your wife. If for some reason that chemistry doesn't work out, you don't like her after a few weeks spending time with her, it's not the right fit for you. She's not you're not feeling it, whatever, with her, then you let her go freely. You cannot sell her. You let her go freely. She is a free woman to go, to leave. You can't give her to another person. Another Israelite can't come and capture her and take her. She's free. She's free to go. That's simple. Now, the question was, did these Kemetics do the same thing? Did these Egyptians, these Kemetic fanatics, do the same thing? That was the question, right? So we're reading the law of abduction during war. Start again from the top. Throughout Egyptian history, the best attested method of entry into enslaved status was through abduction as a prisoner of war. This is not to say that it was the most common method, but simply the one for which there is the most evidence, partially because the capture of prisoners of war was ideologically important to the Egyptians as a mark of strength in the region. Autobiographies boasted of capture of enemies and the scenes of smiting the enemy and leading away chained Nubians and Libyans because a mainstay in Egyptian art, even when Nubians and Libyans were no longer enemies of the state. Let's continue. In the Old Kingdom, prisoners of war were what? Bound for life, included male Nubians and Libyans. Old Kingdom expeditions into Nubia are particularly well attested in personal autobiographies of military officials, which boast their capture and enslavement of thousands of captives, both men and women. Native Egyptians could also be abducted into labor, though it seemed that this practice was frowned upon. Two autobiographies of officials list amongst their accomplishments that they had never forced Egyptians into servitude, with one of these officials specifically that he had never forced any daughters into enslavement. Same, just like Israelites. We couldn't take the captives. If one Israelite nation went to war against another, we could not take the Israelites that remained, that survived that war, into captivity. We could not do that. We would not be taking our fellow Israelite men or women into captivity if for some reason two Israelite nations, two Israelite tribes went to war against each other, because that did happen sometimes, all right? But they couldn't take each other's men or women as captives of war after that war. Just so you understand, Israelites never did that practice amongst each other. It was against the other nations, just like how the Egyptians did it against the other nations. But sometimes, as we just read, they did it amongst themselves, the Egyptians, right? As we just read, right? It says there, though it seems that this practice was frowned upon, two autobiographies of officials list amongst their accomplishments that they had never forced Egyptians into servitude, with one of these specifically that he had never forced any daughters into enslavement, all right? Conscription of prisoners of war into military continued into the Middle Kingdom, in which Nubian and the Levantine troops were conscripted in order to occupy Egyptian troops on the quarry and expeditions as armed support. Women and children were also captured and enslaved en masse. Let me say this again. Women and children were also captured and enslaved en masse, right? List amongst his 80 laborers were 45 Asiatics, along with 8 Asiatic children. These were presumably captured in the Levant, part of the Middle Kingdom expansion. The New Kingdom experienced greater imperial Egyptian expansion into the Levant, with the result that there were more records of people entering enslavement through capture during wartime. All right. The autobiography of General Amos evidenced how he brought away 2 enslaved women as booty. What does that mean? They became from his conquest in the Levant as booty, which means they would become his sexual partners, right? Because they were booty, they were the prize. As part of his retirement gift of land and gold, he was gifted 19 more slaves, some of who bore foreign names and originated from similar campaigns. The Stella of Usat, which is like a stella, is like a it's normally like a, what do you call it? Like an inscription on a piece of brickwork, like a stone. A stella is like a stone with an inscription of information that's on it, right? That's what they wrote on, right? The Stella of Usat, the Viceroy of Kush, lists amongst the achievements of the king that he possesses a female slave from Babylon, a female slave from Babylon, a female slave from Byblos, and a little girl of Alakar, and an old woman of Araka, all right? Showing you, it's got on the Stella of Ustat, the Viceroy of Kush, list amongst these achievements, right? This is who he possessed. It says Tutankhamun's restoration stela, written after upheaval of his father Akhenaten's reign, mentions among his accomplishments that he had filled the workhouses of his officials and priests with men and women brought as booty and entered into slave status. Papyrus Harris, a New Kingdom administrative document, includes a historical section that details the king's capture of persons in military campaigns. So he says here, and Levant. So this is what's on the papyrus, right, of Harris, right? This is what's written on it, right, in hieroglyphics. He says here, I brought back in great numbers those that my sword has spared, with their hands tied behind their backs before my horses, and their wives and children in tens of thousands, and their wives and children in tens of thousands. I imprisoned their leaders in fortresses bearing my name, and I added to them chief archers and tribal chiefs, branded and enslaved with the cartouche of my name, their wives and children being treated in the same way, branded and enslaved, right? Enslaved persons who entered into their state as prisoners of war in the New Kingdom were branded upon their right shoulder as attested on a relief at the Mediat Habu. Branding continued in the late period in which the practice is applied to all enslaved, all right? After the end of the New Kingdom, the upheaval of the third intermediate period, Egypt no longer had the military presence in the Levant, nor the centralized state that would provide for huge influxes of foreign labor. However, the Cushite kings of the late period led campaigns into what is now Gaza, capturing men who appear sporadically in the textual records as men of the north. Right? So it says the Persian satraps Ashames, residing in Egypt in the 5th century BC, records in his letter the importation of a number of foreign slaves, including Cilicians and Iranians. The former were likely captured as part of the Persian expansion. All right. So as well as they go. Okay. So as you can see, in the Ptolemaic period, capturing war remained a common source of slaves, though it was interesting to note that not all captured persons became enslaved, right? So as you can see, this was practiced during the Ptolemaic, the Egyptian times, the abduction, the enslavement of men, women, and children, and the women ultimately became booty to the men, so they would become their sexual partners, sexual slaves for them, their partners, and then ultimately become their wives, right? So they were doing it, the Egyptians. The Kemetic fanatics were doing it because this was common practice in the ancient world. You subdued your enemy, you captured the slaves, the men became laborers, the women became concubines or wife to the soldiers, the warriors that fought that war. All right, they would obviously choose the best crop of the women. It was standard. It was a standard practice back then. Every nation did it. It's just that we had laws that guided us in what we did and how we went about doing it. Whereas these other nations didn't have laws from the Most High. They did it off of their own backs, and they had their own system and methods of how they want to go about doing it. But they did the exact same thing, just so you understand. We had the laws, all right? So Deuteronomy chapter 4, and I'm going to finish it here. I just really wanted to answer the question that Apostle Har said. Did these other nations do the same thing? Yes, except we had a law to guide us and a power that gave us the power to conquer these nations. So, as we all know, Deuteronomy 4:1. Now, therefore, hearken, O Israel. So this is during the times of Moses, during the times of King David, during the times of all of these wars, during the ancient times, right? Now, therefore, hearken, O Israel, unto the statutes and unto the judgments which I teach you, for to do them that ye may live and go in and possess the land which the Lord God Yahweh of your fathers giveth you. You shall not add unto the word which I command you. Don't get emotional. Don't get emotional, Israel. Don't add unto the word and start making up your own fathoms like you're the Most High. The Most High is the potter. We're the clay. We tend to forget this. We're nothing to the Most High. Thank the Lord that we've chosen people. But I'm saying ultimately, we're this minuscule thing in all of what's going on in this whole universe and the heaven of heavens. We're minuscule, but we are his chosen minuscule people. You shall not add unto the word which I command you, neither shall you diminish aught from it. So we're not going to diminish this because it offends people. The laws regarding domestic relations. We're not going to diminish what the Lord said. If he gives a nation into our hands and they becomes our captives, we are allowed to go and look for the most beautifulest handmaid amongst that nation. We're allowed to bring her home and let her shave her head and pare her nails, right? We're allowed to. These are the rules. These are the rights that she's got. She's gonna have the right to mourn a full month for her parents, completely. And we're gonna have the right to, and we have the right to go in unto her and make her our wife and humble her. And if after all of that, we're not bonding with her, we don't really like her as much as we thought we did at the beginning, we must freely let her go and not sell her. No merchandise. We must not allow any other Israelite to come and take her and capture her. She's free to go out into the world and find her a husband. Simple. She may even want to stay and find a husband amongst the Israelites, but she's free to go. She's free. But that's the domestic relations law. That's how things were back then. We're not going to get emotional about how the Most High set the thing, right? So we're not going to add to the word nor diminish it because of people's emotions in the 21st century, where the woman has surpassed the man. We're living in a kingdom that's guided by, that's ruled by women, but they're under the thumb of their oppressors, Esau, the man that's put them in this position. Make them have this power. It says that ye may keep the commandments of the Lord your power, which I command you. So don't diminish nothing from the law. So when we're teaching you, we're not going to diminish it because, oh, it's going to touch your feelings. We're going to show you exactly how it was back then. And in the kingdom, we're going to be allowed to do the same thing again. Just so you understand. Isaiah 14:2 is quite clear. It says, your eyes have seen what the Lord Yahweh did because of Baal-Peor. For all the men that followed Baal-Peor, so those are the same men that are following this Kemetic. These are the Kemetic fanatics today. The same men that followed Baal-Peor are your same Kemetic fanatics today. These are the same Kemetic. These are the Jabberies and the Sarnetas of the 21st century. Those were the men of Baal-Peor back then. They're back here today. Everyone's back again. Everyone's back in their lot, let me tell you. And they're back here today again. The Jabberies and the Sarnetas are the same men, back here again today. All right? It says that your eyes have seen what the Lord did because of Baal-Peor. For all the men that followed Baal-Peor, the Lord Yahweh has destroyed them from among you. And he's going to destroy these men, these Kemetic fanatics, these I want to be so African Israelites. The Lord's going to destroy them with these ICBMs. And if the ICBM doesn't get them, the chariots and the angels are going to destroy them in the second coming of our Lord Yahweh Shai. Because these are these effeminate, emotional men who can't just take the Bible for what it actually says and accept it. It was a common practice back then, as I showed you, amongst the Kemetic Egyptians. All nations were doing it, except we had the law to guide us when we did these things. It says here, and the Most High, it says, the Lord Yahweh has destroyed them from among you. Let's do it again. But ye that cleave unto the Lord, Yahweh, your power, are alive, every one of you this day. That's why we're alive. We're so alive because we understand what's going on. We're not adding or taking away. We're giving you the raw scriptures as it was back then, as it's going to be in the kingdom, and how we're meant to behave ourselves today. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord, my power, commanded me, that ye should do so in the land whither you go to possess it. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom, Israel, and your understanding in the sight of the nations. You see, these guys don't have no wisdom or understanding. All they've got is emotions. It's just my emotions running away with me. It's their emotions, mate. Their emotions running away with them. Their imaginations running away with them with their emotions. It says, keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great, who has God so nigh unto them as Yahweh, our power, is in all things that we call upon him for? And what nation is there so great that has statutes and judgments so righteous as all the law which I have set before you this day? Only take heed to thyself and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, and that's what they have done, and lest they depart from thy heart all the days of thy life, but teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons. So we are teaching you and showing you what the laws was. It doesn't apply now because we're not in no power, we're not capturing no nations, we're in captivity. All we do is follow the laws to the best of our abilities, and we're not going to go against, we're not going to break the laws of the countries that we're living in, but we're going to follow the laws to the best of our ability. We're not capturing anybody now. We're not forcing anybody now. We're not telling anyone to take no woman and force yourself upon her, because that's against everything that this society stands for. We're not telling anybody to get involved in grape in the 21st century. Not at all. We're not, what's the word I'm looking for? We're not pushing that. We're not saying that's what you should be doing. Absolutely not. All we're saying is that this was a common practice when nations went to war during the ancient times, during the Bible times. In the 21st century today, to force any woman or to humble any woman. No, we're not pushing that. We're not condoning that in any way in the 21st century. You're going to go to jail. We are telling you to respect the woman in the 21st century. Wine her and dine her. But I'm telling you, in the kingdom, we're going to be a complete different mindset, and we're going to have the power, because we're going to be superhumans. We're going to have superpowers. And the funny thing about it, they're going to want to be with you. They're going to want to flock to you, because they realize that their children are going to be sons of gods. So they're going to be normal people. But when they have our children, these handmaids, those children are going to be the sons of God, the sons of Yeshua. So any woman, when the kingdom is established, to be able to have children that are going to be the sons of God, they're going to be fighting themselves. The women are going to be fighting each other to be our wives in the kingdom. Truly understand that. Because they know that once their child is born, it's going to be an Israelite child. He's going to be a son of God. He's going to have superpowers, spiritual powers. So that child is going to do everything for his mum in the kingdom as well. If she gets sick, boom, he can heal his mum. She ain't going to be doing any hard labor because she's got a son. She's going to say, my son is one of the sons of God. My son is a son of Yasharallah. She's going to be a mum of another nation that's going to be able to say to the other women, I've got a son of Yasharallah. I've got a daughter of Yasharallah. My sons. So they're going to be fighting over us. We're not going to have to force them in the kingdom. I'm just saying that the right will be there that for you to take them. But you're not going to have to force them in the kingdom, because they're going to be fighting tooth and nail to bear your children, brothers, in the kingdom. To know that they're going to have a son or a daughter of Yasharallah, the son of the Most High, the daughter of the Most High. They're going to be fighting tooth and nail to be your wives. The point I'm making is that you will have the right to do that, to take them, if so be, but you're not going to have to. They're going to be fighting each other to be your baby mothers, to be your concubines. Trust me, to know that they're going to bear a son of the Most High that's going to be immortal, that's going to have spiritual powers, that's going to be a ruler in the kingdom, that they're going to be a part of that family. Come on, man. Think about this. But yeah, these are emotional guys that don't respect the laws and how things were back then and what the Most High set. The Most High set a law for Israel so that to guide them, while the other nations were doing it, but they were doing it of their own volition. So on that note, I pray you were edified. All praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'asham, Rakah, Kodash, double honors to the apostles and to the elders of Great Millstone. Let's say, keep praying, keep safe, repent, and hold on to this truth, Israel. Shalom, shalom, shalom.